And we're recording. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited today to hang out with one of my very favorite people in the whole world to talk to and write with and hang out with. This is Griffin. No, over here. This is Griffin Barber. Griff and I co-wrote Second Chance Angel together, and we'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. As well as we've worked together on quite a few projects now, actually. Yeah, he's just a great guy. And and like I said, one of my favorite co-authors. So I wanted to feature him in this series of co-author conversations that I'm doing here on Casey Ezel Writer Life. So if you like this kind of stuff, give me that chuff gig or thumbs up and hang out and get to meet my friend Griffin. Griffin, who are you? Tell the people.
So I'm Griffin Barber. I co-authored with Casey, as well as worked on her on some other projects, not quite as hand in glove with Chuck Gannon. But I'm also an author in the 1632 series. 1632 or 1636 Mission to the Mughals was my first novel with Eric Flint. And then 1637, The Peacock Throne, just came out last year, as well as A Second Chance Angel and a bunch of short stories that I've been putting out with pretty good regularity now. I did 5 in the last year. They're all going to be either have been or will be published shortly. My first publications were with Eric Flint's Grantville Gazette magazine. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm kind of used to writing in shared universes and that kind of thing. But the property that we worked on together was my first time building a shared universe and then bringing it all the way through to completion in a complete book. So
yeah, it was a fun project. Yeah, I think one of the things that I talk about this all the time, like how every collaboration is different. And, when I work with Marisa, we have a certain flow. When I work with Mark Wandry, we have a certain flow. When I worked with you, we had a certain flow. And I think one of the things that characterized our flow was speed. Like we wrote the book so fast. Yeah. I think we went from like page 1 to a finalized finished draft, at least within like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, a little bit under 6 months. It was really fast for both of us. I mean, neither of us is quite that fast.
Not usually. No. Yeah. And why? Like, why do you think that was? Why do you think we did that?
I think we were both juiced about it.
Yeah,
we were both really excited about it, and it was that excitement, and also, both of us are from backgrounds that team is more important than the individual. So we tended to be, like, I can't let her down.
Yeah.
The same thing. I can't let him down. So we just kind of like, I told her I was going to get this done and I went ahead and got it done. So it was a good kind of pressure and internal pressure to finish.
For sure. Yeah. There was that, not wanting to let your partner or your teammate down, vibe. But I think there was also like a little bit of, I don't know, like, I hate using this word, but like synergistic.
Well, there was the writer's room. The writer's room was going on.
Because you would send me a scene and I'd read it and I'd be like, God damn, this is brilliant. Like, I love this. And it would spark kind of the next scene in sequence or the reaction or whatever in my head. And so I had to get it down before I lost it. So that was, I was really grateful for that piece of the dynamic too, that, when you find someone that lights that up in you, I think that's a pretty good sign that you should probably write some books together.
It was and also from my perspective, everything that I'd done up to then independently on my own had been a slog. It had been challenging to get anywhere with it, and to have somebody cheering you on as you're working and grooving to what you're putting down was, made it faster and made it easier, I think. And beyond that, though, also the immediacy of first person is both, it's dangerous, but it's also liberating in that it's really fast because you don't have to worry about what other people are thinking. You only have to think about what it is that your character is perceiving about what it is they're thinking or doing and that kind of thing.
Right.
So that was really exciting. And we were challenging ourselves to do something different than we had ever done before, or that I have even seen done anywhere else before.
Yeah.
And we had a soundtrack. I mean,
we did. We did have a soundtrack. So I was going to kind of talk about this a little bit later. But I'm going to share the cover right now. Okay. So yeah, that's the cover of Second Chance Angel. And so that's the book that we're talking about that Griffin and I wrote together like this. And I'm really happy with how it came out. And I think, you know, you talk about the soundtrack. This cover sort of encapsulates like the opening scene, which was how that whole thing came about. We've talked about it on other podcasts, but I need you to tell the story because you tell the story so well of how this book came about. Like what started this? Why did we start writing this project together?
Well, I mean, it's kind of sprang out of us meeting at LibertyCon and talking a lot of trash about everything.
Yeah.
And then continuing that stellar basis of a relationship online with trashy memes and that kind of thing, but also discussing, every once in a while putting up some music or something that we really liked, or talking about films that we were watching, that kind of thing. And the particular inference or a reference that was used for this was I was watching Scott Bradley's orchestra and
Postmodern Jukebox, yeah.
Postmodern Jukebox and orchestra, yeah. And I was watching it, and this performance came up of Seven Nation Army, and that they had done as a remix, as a torch song. And I was like, I can just see this being the beginning. I sent it to Casey, and I said, I can just see this. This is the opening chapter of a book.
Yeah. Well, what you actually said was this is the opening chapter of a noir novel.
Yes.
And that was the hook that got me. And I was like, all right, how's it go? And so you wrote that opening scene. And the cover is basically an illustration of it, right? So we have the singer in the club with her audience of mixed species aliens on a space station.
Yep.
And we just sort of went from there. So yeah, it's a great cover. It's a great book. It's available now if you guys want to go check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. But yeah, love this book.
And from Blackstone Publishing, that they are. The cool thing about this too is that the whole process was kind of neat for us, because we got to cheerlead each other through the process of writing it, and then through the business process of getting it published as well. And the ups and downs there, where normally you just want to sit in a corner and cry because you got turned down by somebody or something like that.
Right.
You were able to kind of go, all right, well, let's do something else, and
right.
The different origins of our history in publishing was also kind of, or not necessarily origins, but the different routes we'd taken to get novels done and that kind of thing also fed into it. So I gained a lot of experience, on the business end of it, as well as from your superior romance writing or emotional scene writing. So we were able to kind of build on everything together with that, and I thought it was, it really turned out well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one of the other things that I really enjoyed about this whole process of bringing this book to life was, so the publisher that picked it up was Blackstone Publishing, like you mentioned. Blackstone made their name in audiobooks, so right from the beginning, we knew that there was going to be an audiobook, which was very exciting to me, because I knew that I'd had some pretty good success with audiobooks with my indie stuff, from Chris Kennedy's house. So when we started talking to them about producing the audiobook, we were able to get not one, but 3 amazing professional narrators to narrate the two main characters, and then a third narrator, Natasha Sudik, did she did the voices of the AIs that comprise kind of the interstitial tissue between the chapters of this book. And I was just so happy with how that whole thing turned out. So if you're an audiobook fan, this is one to check out for sure too. So, all right. So yeah, that's Second Chance Angel. That's our, that was the big novel that we,
and when I think back on it, I go, what balls we had to,
yeah,
to think, yeah, you know what, we can just, together, never having worked together before, we'll just write a novel.
That's right. I barely know you. Like, so we met, you said this, but we met at LibertyCon. What year was it? I don't even know. But I think
16.
we started writing this like 3 months later.
Yeah, 16, I think, or 15.
Yeah. And we met because some dude was giving me shit about being a girl pilot.
Or he was repeating BS that people repeat about women.
That's
pilots.
right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, he was talking about, like, oh yeah, that's why you're so good as a pilot, is because you're a girl. And I remember making some kind of like very dry comment, like, oh, you mean the years of practice and study and development didn't play into it at all? And he was like, no, it's because you're a girl.
Not at all.
And I remember you standing there and you're like, what the hell, man?
I think he was French with the last name of Dumas.
Well, he was, to be fair, it was a convention and he had obviously been enjoying himself. So, he may not have been working with, his brain cells may have had bigger fish to fry at the moment.
Well, mine too, but I wasn't making that mistake. So,
well, okay. So anyway, I don't remember his name, but thank you, nameless jackass, for introducing me to my friend and inadvertently introducing me to my friend and co-author, Griffin Barber.
Yeah, and we were kind of around each other before that.
Yeah.
Because of the LibertyCon and the anthology that you were in with John Ringo, or right. John Ringo's Universe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that I desperately wanted to be in. But yeah, so, and it's funny how that those conventions can really pay off in relationships with folks and learning how to kind of navigate all the questions that come about when you're an author. As like, who do you check in with when you don't know, what's going on?
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. I talk about this a lot, that, I can trace every professional opportunity that I've received back to my attendance at a convention, one way or another. Now, that's not to say that I didn't work for it and I didn't, hustle and grind and all those buzzwords.
Didn't actually write.
Right. And right. That's not to say that I didn't actually, do the work and put in the work and develop my craft, but the connections that exactly what you said, the connections you make at conventions, even if nothing comes of them immediately, they're invaluable. It's all networking. So, and they're fun. I mean, you can't, if
that's what you're into.
Right.
Science fiction and fantasy is what you're into. They're pretty fun.
Yeah. It's a good time. Good time hanging out with people who are having a good time talking about the stuff you like. So yeah,
that you're into. That is not easy to find necessarily in our day-to-day lives, depending on your regular career or your first career kind of thing.
That's right. That's right. It's funny that for those of you who don't know, Griffin's a retired law enforcement officer. I'm a soon-to-be retired military officer, and we've found a lot of parallels between in
that first
career and my career. Simply because, I think both of us at a certain point, and I don't know, maybe I don't mean to speak for you, Griff, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we had this conversation where at a certain point in the beginning of our career, we were like very sort of closeted about our geekiness. Like you had to kind of like keep it on the down low. And then once you get to a certain level of experience and a certain level of, street cred, for lack of a better term, then you're like, you know what? I'm a big geek. Like I play D&D on the weekends. What do you guys do? So,
Yeah, or you're just like, you're no longer concerned about advancement so much,
and you just don't care.
for me, it was pretty much I wasn't worried about advancing anymore because that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, whatever.
You guys might as well get to know the real me.
Yeah, and one of the things that is true about the world in general is that there's a lot of a-holes out there who don't read.
Yeah.
And they're like proud of it, and I just never understood that. Like,
yeah.
in any of the careers I've done, I've had, or the jobs I've had, I've just been like, you're stating that like you're proud of it.
Right.
How do you hone that mind to do anything without reading? I just didn't get it. So,
and it's interesting to me that one of my favorite things about this sort of like technological expansion that we have been in the midst of, for my entire lifetime, is there's a lot of different ways that one can consume media and one can consume stories. And so even when I find people who are like, yeah, I don't read that, I don't read that shit. Like, I don't do that. I find it interesting because if I ask a couple of questions, I find that they are consuming stories. Like, they are interested in stories, whether it be in the format of movies and television shows or video games or, podcasts, whatever. Stories are an essential part of human nature. And I think that's, one of the big reasons why I do the things that I do. I feel the need to tell stories is because, I don't know, it seems like a way of connecting with my basic humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, that got pretty deep. I didn't mean to Hey, let's talk about noir. You want to talk about noir for a minute?
Sure.
Because I mentioned that when you sent me that link to, it's the Postmodern Jukebox cover of Seven Nation Army that features Haley Reinhart. And I'll put a link in the description below so that you guys can check it out if you want. It is beautiful. It is a beautiful song. But the thing that got me in that message was when you said it was the opening to a sci-fi noir book. Why are you interested in noir? Because that's one of the things that you and I bonded over first. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, being a cop and in the state of California, Mulholland Falls, all the best noir pretty much is of the 50s forward has been, for me, has been out of California. So Mulholland Falls, which a lot of people didn't like because it actually is effing noir.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a happy ending.
It's dark.
LA Confidential, which is less noir than the actual books were. The books are full on noir. But the film is a mishmash of two different ones, and they kind of soften the ending to make it less noir. But yeah, I've always been into, I was a cop for 20 years, hard-bitten detective, and that kind of thing. Obviously, it's something that I was into.
What is it about it that you think captures your imagination?
That the proverbial. The story kind of generates itself. The protagonist is usually caught between a rock and a hard place, either criminals and the law, criminals and corrupt law, that kind of thing, and yet still tries to do things right according to their worldview. And like life, the outcome is not guaranteed to be pleasing or to be healthy. Or to be anything other than the outcome. And that is huge for me because, again, 20 years of law enforcement, you see a lot of outcomes that are suboptimal.
Right.
So for me, I always appreciated that aspect of it. And the doing what's right by your standards, as opposed to maybe doing what was lawful, doing what was seen to be advantageous for advancing your career, or whatever it may be, but doing what's right is more important than just about anything else to most of the protagonists in noir fiction.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're also generally tend to be flawed human beings who, are at least a little bit aware of their flaws, more than the average ape, which, might be a conceit of mine, but I think I'm pretty aware of my flaws. So I tend to think in terms of like, that character-driven story where the character's choices are always going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But they're not difficult because of some outside force, in as much as they are difficult because they're the right choices despite all the crap that's going on around them. So I've always that. And then, fedoras and mystery ladies and, stuff like that. And,
backseam stockings. Yeah. No.
and mysteries and, the whole 9 yards. It's just, it appeals to me. And also because in this particular instance, it crosses so many genres.
Mm-hmm.
It ports through so many genres you can do with it. So as you proved with the anthologies that you've put together.
That is an excellent segue. Stand by one. I'm going to share my screen again and show you guys the first noir project that Griff and I worked on. And that is, that's the cover for Noir Fatale. So this was the first noir anthology that I edited with Larry Correia. And
I was there when she came up with the idea.
He was. I was just going to tell that story. So fun backstory. Was it the LibertyCon that we met, or was it? I think it was.
I think it was the subsequent one. It was the subsequent one.
So we were at LibertyCon, which again, if you're not familiar, is a science fiction fantasy convention. It's a relatively small one. It's held in Chattanooga every year, but it's very heavily attended by a lot of professionals in the business, whether they be publishers or writers or editors or game production people. Griffin and I had been having this conversation about noir and how much we liked it, and all the cool aspects of it. He introduced me to Mulholland Falls and was like, "Watch this movie," because I'd never heard of it before, and I watched it and I loved it. And we were talking about Raymond Chandler, so we had this ongoing conversation. And I had shared with him a story that I had written that was a noir short story. And I was like, I don't know, I need to get this published, but I don't know where there's a home for it. And I said, I really wish that Baen, because I had just done the Black Tide Rising anthology in John Ringo's universe, and that had worked out well, and we'd got a lot of positive feedback.
You had just written a short story for it.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, this was your first anthology that you managed, right?
Yes.
So this is a huge deal to get off the ground.
Yeah. And so, in talking about it, we kind of came up with this plan of, Larry Correia is a bigger name Baen author. He sells a lot of books and he has a rabid fan base. He also has a noir series, the Grim Noir series, which is probably not his main property. I would call that his Monster Hunter International series, but the Grim Noir series is very, very good fantasy, like urban fantasy noir set in the 1930s. And I absolutely loved that series. And so we got this like sneaky idea together. So I got in touch with programming for LibertyCon, Rich Gruller, and I said, I proposed, hey, Rich, I know Larry's coming to LibertyCon this year. What if I moderated a noir panel? He has this noir series. We could invite some other authors. And I think people would really like that. And Rich thought it was a great idea. And so I did the noir panel. And I got all dressed up as the femme fatale with, again, the backseam stockings and the pencil skirt the only thing I wished I had that I didn't have was like a birdcage veil, to come down across my face. But, you work with what you got.
Yes. And it worked out in the end.
It did. Yeah, it did. So we did this panel and I moderated it and it was well attended, and all the panelists had fun. I had fun. And
I was an audience member for that and I had fun. So
yeah. Oh, thanks. Good. And it just so happened schedule wise that the next event immediately following that was a dinner that Baen Publishing puts on at LibertyCon for all of the authors and editors in that work with Baen. And Griffin
and some people sneak in friends too, because
well, you and I were both invited because we'd both
but I sneak in friends. I've had a couple of friends that aren't authors that I've just had come with me because
come with me.
At the time I wasn't going with Karen, so I sneak a friend in.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so we went from that panel to that, and I was talking with Griffin about we need, I think we should do this anthology. And he was like, why don't you ask Larry to do it with you? He's right over there. Go ask him. And it was almost like a no balls moment. Like, you know, we'll put up or shut up. Here's your moment, you know? So I went over to Larry and I was like, hey, Larry, how are you? Did you have fun at the panel? Me too. So I have this idea for how we can make a lot of money, how, you know, you won't have to do very much work and we can make a lot of money. And he was like, I like your pitch. Let's hear it.
And
so
Larry's a great guy too. I mean,
he is. He's very cool. He listened to the idea of the, you know, the kind of the cross genre noir thing and was like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. We can't do it this year. I'm too busy. But, you know, let's talk about it next year. And we did. We talked about it further at DragonCon the next year, came up with a plan, pitched it to Tony. Tony liked it. And so there you have it. We have that was how Noir Fatale came about. And we had some phenomenal stories. And one of which was Griffin's, The Lady in Red, I believe is what it's called. Goddess in Red.
A Goddess in Red, yeah.
A Goddess in Red, yeah. And the whole like concept of this anthology was that we were focusing on the character archetype of a femme fatale. And oh my God, Griff, can you write a femme fatale? She's so good. She's so good. So this one is out. You guys can pick it up. Again, I'll put a link in the description below. But it actually did fairly well, which is cool because
it's also got Laurel K. Hamilton, who's, you know, huge urban fantasy.
Yeah.
Casey outdid herself getting a stable of writers to contribute to it, all of whom were bigger names than either of us, you know, more or less. There were like 2 or 3 that were at our level or that kind of thing. But really cool lineup and really neat stories too. So,
and it was really fun, I think, to showcase how noir can, like, you can have a noir fantasy story, you can have a noir sci-fi story, you can have a noir urban fantasy.
Yeah, because mine was epic fantasy, you know, in a very dark, twisted way. But mine was epic fantasy. There were 2 or 3 urban fantasy, 4 or 5 urban fantasies.
And Bob Buettner turned in a absolutely gorgeous YA science fiction romance noir, which I didn't know could exist until I read this story, but that's exactly what it is. It's beautiful.
And
absolutely
then,
beautiful.
Pearls was a great post-war, far future science fiction war stuff by Alistair Kimball. And you know, there's some really neat stuff in there. So and pretty much all of these individuals, aside from Laura, I don't know if you met her yet or not, but they were people that we had met. I had certainly met only through LibertyCon and other conventions that I was going to. So that was really neat. One of the things that's kind of funny about you is, and it's been kind of a constant refrain, is that if you decide that you're going to work with somebody, you end up working with them. You just kind of like, oh, you know, hey, I'm going to work with you, and then you end up working with them. So it's kind of neat, neat skill I wish I had. But it was funny because at some point you decided you want to work with me, and that's what we ended up doing. And then, but the same thing with Larry, and the same thing with John, I presume, was because you have the Gunpowder and Embers stuff and Chris, and you know, so it's good to know Casey. Just so you know, kind of good to know her. Because if she decides she wants to work with you, you know, all sorts of stuff can happen.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you. I just look at it as, I don't know. I just want to be friends with these people. And so I end up like working with these people who are my friends, you know?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing though, is that it's, you know, to take full advantage of the contacts that you make. Yeah. First off, don't be a dick.
Right.
Secondly, be approachable and be open to building relationships with people you wouldn't normally necessarily associate with. I mean, it's which I think is something we all need to flip and do now, given how horrible our political situations are, because nobody's understanding anybody else. So be open to new things and new people and new points of view,
and be able to communicate with
move forward, and might raise all boats instead of just you know making more of a mess for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I mentioned Bob Buettner, and it's funny because I know that you have a very similar you met Bob through a very similar set of circumstances. You know, here's a guy who's essentially one of the seminal voices in military science fiction, you know, with his Orphan series. And I get an email from him asking me about some technical details about rotary wing aviation, because, you know, when I started writing for Baen, I became known as the helicopter chick, right? So anybody who writes anything about helicopters, they send me an email and I give them advice. And so I answered his questions and you know, advised a little bit on some of what he was writing. And that formed that friendship, that relationship that, you know, has just been one of, first of all, he's an amazing gentleman, wonderful person to know, like just really kind and like the kind of person you leave a conversation from him feeling like refreshed and energized, just because it's just such a cool conversation. He's such a smart guy, you know, and he can talk on so many subjects, and he's just very personable. And I've now had 2 stories from him that, you know, I asked him to work in anthologies with me, and he's done it for me twice. And the first time was Noir Fatale. The second one was No Game for Knights, which I'll show you guys here momentarily. And both of those stories absolutely blew me away when I read them. Just like took my breath away. They were so good. And so that to me is like the perfect exemplar of how making these connections and helping people out and being open and approachable and you know, communicating with people can really be beneficial on both sides of the coin. Because he says the same thing. You know, he tells me every time I see him, he's like, I've really enjoyed working on these stories. It has allowed me to work outside of the box, right? You know, it's allowed me to do kind of refreshing brain refresher projects that are not the same thing that I'm doing day in and day out all the time. And yeah, I mean, that's obviously very gratifying for me to hear that he values our friendship as much.
Especially from a you know, somebody that has that level of achievement in the
field. I mean, the man's a giant, you know, like, so yeah, it's I think you're right. You know, I think it really does. It really does boil down to, you know, rule number 1, don't be a dick. Rule number 2, be open and communicate with people, you know.
And there's a caveat in there about the don't be a dick. Also, don't tell them the very first thing how much you love them. Scary, creepy. Don't do that. That's like, that really is rule 1A. Don't be a dick, and really don't tell them that how much you love them when you first meet them, because there's really no way to go where to go from that. You know, when you go steaming up to somebody, go, I love you.
I may have broken that rule, actually.
Well, you know, and some people can get away with it. Not everybody can get away with it. You know, if you're, let's put it this way, if you're 6 foot or more and you go steamrolling up to somebody and tell them I love you, you may have less than optimal results.
The first time I met Laurel Hamilton face to face was, well, no, I take it back. I met Laurel Hamilton face to face in Dragon Con of 2001 when I was with my best friend at the time, Tammy Archuleta. I had never read any of Laurel's books. We went to a signing because Tammy was a fan. I bought the first book in her Mary Gentry series, and Laurel autographed it for me. That was the first time I met her face to face. The first time I met her face to face, where
you knew who she was,
right? Where and where she remembered who I was or knew who I was. Although she tells me she remembers that incident of meeting me and Tammy together, because she said it's because you don't often see 2 military women, like, you know, come through together or whatever. Because she has a large part of her fan base is connected with the military in one way or another. I think it's because she gets her guns right. But she when I met her as a pro was again at Dragon Con in like 2017. Noir Fatale hadn't come out yet, but it was about to. I'd already worked with her on the project, and to my everlasting embarrassment, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I cannot tell you how much I just love you. She was like, well, thank you. But the reason for that.
That's a little different because you already had received a story from her.
Right. Well, and there's more to that story too. So when I first met her, I was with my friend Tammy. Tammy was killed in Afghanistan in 2003. When that happened, for whatever reason, I felt moved to write to Laurel in care of her publisher and just, you know, tell her, you know, hey, I just wanted to thank you for being, you know, for writing these stories that meant so much to my friend, and you know, for kind of helping her to see that it was okay to kind of have like a little bit of a dark side, dark mentality, to have dark humor and not be like all sunshine and roses all the time.
Right.
Because that was a really big deal to Tammy. And Laurel wrote back.
I see now why she got along with you so well.
Yeah. But Laurel wrote back in, you know, she's a classy individual, and she wrote back to this fan who wrote her out of the blue, you know, talking about her dead friend. And the letter that she wrote me, I still have it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful letter of condolence and you know, a wish for healing and joy, and it's a gorgeous letter. And so I was trying to be very cool when I met her at Dragon Con in 2017, but all I could think about was this letter that she'd written me. And I was like, I love you. I just love you. I'm always going to love you because you wrote me this beautiful letter, and now you're writing me stories for my anthology. So this is awkward, but you're just going to have to deal with the fact that I love you.
Well, and then, you know, the other thing about that was the reciprocity that came about from that eventually as well. You know, for me, it was kind of wild because I was at SpikeCon, and the only thing I had done with Laurel K. Hamilton, the first time I met her was actually at SpikeCon in Utah. And we were on a panel for Noir Fatale, shilling for it at the convention. And then we did a signing, and there, you know, there's this enormous line of everybody who wants to see her and get her signature. And there's the big trough of people that are getting signed by myself and, you know, the other lesser known authors.
While I'm waiting for Laurel, could you please?
Exactly. Who are you again? Oh. But
I've had that experience, and I'm the editor of the anthology.
So, but you know, at that convention, they were talking about Laurel was talking about an anthology she was putting together that was going to be a little different, and they had apparently a bunch of people just drop out, and I'm like, well, don't let that opportunity pass you by. You know, jump on that with both feet and ride its coattails as much as possible. And that ended up being the story in Fantastic Hope, which was really fun to write. And, you know, again, sharing these anthology pages with these hugely well-known and respected authors within their genres and fields is, you know, it never hurts.
Yeah.
Unless you completely phone it in and make a train wreck of it, in which case you shouldn't have been in the anthology in the first place. Right. It's always a good thing for you. And in this particular one, it's like, you know, again, there are all these people that would never look at my stuff generally to begin with because they're, you know, urban fantasy fans.
Right.
And you look at the Noir Fatale did the same thing, but you know, Fantastic Hope as well. That another anthology was just huge because, and the only reason why the opportunities came up was because literally they said, hey, we had a bunch of people drop out. We need a story in 2 weeks. And that's a challenge. I'm like, well, challenge me, will you?
Yeah.
And I went ahead and
I got you, fam.
Exactly. I had a fragment of a story that I had jotted down, you know, at one point and never finished. And I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And it's going to be a little different for this anthology. And I was kind of worried about that. But they enjoyed it. And her William McCaskey, the co-editor for it, jumped on it as well. So that was really neat. That was, again, but it only came about because A, you, B, being at a convention. I don't think you'd attended to it. Did you?
No, I wasn't at that one.
Yeah.
I wasn't at that one. But I also had, you know, kind of had that opportunity again. You know, Laurel's such a classy individual, and she was talking about this, and Chris Smith, who's another co-author of mine that I'll be doing a video with at some point, he and I are working on the Gunpowder and Embers series with John Ringo together. Chris actually emailed me because I was in the middle of moving. I was at my mom's house before moving to Japan because it was over 4th of July weekend, and he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you," and he emailed me kind of like the quick rundown of this is what happened. You know, this is the conversation that Laurel had. And I guess he had mentioned to Laurel, he's like, I know Casey has a story that would be perfect for this. Because I had written the story that ended up coming out in Fantastic Hope. I'd written several years earlier and shared with him. And it was one of those things kind of like the noir story where it was like, I love this story. I don't know where to put it yet. Like, I don't have a home for it yet. And so I ended up sending her I call it my Mormon werewolf story. And
that's what it is.
Because that's what it is. You know, she's part of the Mormon settlers that, you know, cross the plains and ends up becoming a werewolf. Spoiler alert. Yeah, same kind of deal. It was like, you know, do you have something? Can you have something? I was like, well, yes, I do. So the moral of that story for the writers in the audience is never throw anything away. You know, like even if it's not finished.
So,
yeah,
mine was just a fragment. It was literally like 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it wasn't like a paragraph outline. It was just 2 paragraphs of the beginning of a story that I was like,
Yeah.
And I looked it up and I was like, yep, here we go. And shoom.
Yeah. No, great stuff. Great stuff.
So it's really neat that, you know, how those connections kind of go out and come back and that kind of thing. Because the other thing we haven't even talked about is Chuck.
Yeah.
You know, and Chuck Gannon, Charles E. Gannon, Dr. Charles E. Gannon, has been another one that's really who lives by the creative, you know, rising tide raises all boats. And he certainly gave me my first opportunities. He actually insisted that I write a short story for the Granville Gazette when I kind of poo-pooed it and said, I'm a novelist. I don't write short stories. And then I turn around and a year later, he's like, so how's that selling your novel going? And I'm like, it hasn't sold. He's like, okay, well, you know, if you want to write a short story for the Granville Gazette, they still need, you know, good storytellers, and you're a good storyteller, so give us something. And then he shepherded my short story through the editorial process, and my very first attempt to get sold. Well, actually, the second one, the first one actually was in consideration, but they decided not to do the anthology, so I don't count that as a refusal or anything like that.
Sure.
But so that very first short story got published, and 3 short stories later, I had a novel deal. So, you know, but Chuck's Caneverse, Kane Riordan universe or the Terran Republic. We've both done short stories for it. We kind of messed around with him with an idea, and he kind of ran with it and did the Lost Signals anthology, which is a huge anthology. And you did something really cool in that one, co-working with Mike Massa.
Yeah.
That turned out really cool. And then I had a short story in that, which was really long, actually. But then we've both done a series of novellas in Murphy's Lawless series. That's been fun to work alongside, not necessarily directly hand in hand, but work either alongside or in the rail car behind you or in front of you for different stories.
Right.
It's been fun.
I'm looking for the, here we go. I've got the cover for Murphy's Lawless, so I'll show that real quick.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But again, Chuck is so generous with his time and his ideas and his IP, because he allows these, you know, lesser known authors to get a chance at a crack at playing in his universe. And this is really fun.
It was really fun. It is really fun. You know, it continues to be, you know, a fun project to work with you and Chuck, but also to working with like Mike Massa and Ike and Chris Kennedy and Mark, and then Bill Webb came on for the second season. So yeah, I've got that one too. Hold on, I'll show you the. Is this the one? I think this is the one. Yeah, sorry, it's small. But yeah, it's oh no, that's not the right one. That was the pre one.
Get to watch the inner workings there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the correct one.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to work in that. This is the first 3 novellas of season 2, which was me, Kevin Eikenberry, and Bill Webb. And then, you know, obviously working with Chuck too. So
yeah, and the second half, which I'm in, that I lead off, it's the kind of more space conflict stuff that's yet to be consolidated into one one book yet. So yeah, you know, and again, that was at World Fantasy, and you know, my non-writer friend was the one who kind of ensured the introduction to Chuck, because Chuck was talking in front of an audience, and I was sitting next to this guy who was dressed really well. He looked like he stepped out of a noir anthology, and my best friend was sleeping off his hangover upstairs and came down late to this panel. It was Walter John Williams from, you know, who's written some of the best, for me, cyberpunk ever written. Hardwired was amazing and very noir kind of thing. And then there were two other authors and Chuck Gannon, and I don't remember the other ones, but there was a guy sitting in front of myself and this very well-dressed guy with a fedora and everything else in my row. And this guy was just kind of an ape. He just was, he was eating. We're all a little hungover, because that's World Fantasy for you. If you drink, you'd probably drink too much at World Fantasy. We were, you know, sitting there, and everybody's working off their hangover. And I know Walter John Williams was definitely hungover, because he had been drinking a lot the night before. And we were sitting there, and he's eating a breakfast. This guy in front of us is eating a breakfast burrito with his mouth open, you know, just and it's the smell, you know, breakfast burrito. If you're not eating it, you don't want to smell it.
Yeah, not when you're hungover.
Yeah, certainly not when you're hungover, but just generally, it's just not something you want to necessarily smell if you're not you're not into it. Anyway, so, and then he made some butthead comments as well. And then, so and myself and the well-dressed gentleman to my right we keep like looking at this guy like, you know, wanting to slap him because he's just an idiot. And the panel closes down. It was about gunpowder in fantasy settings, so it was kind of a cool thing. And we get up to leave, and the burrito boy tries to intercede with Chuck, and I wanted to talk to him, and so did the well-dressed gentleman, who I later learned was an FBI agent and is Alistair Kimball.
Alistair Kimball. Yeah, I was just going to ask if that was him. Yeah.
So that's how we met 11, 12 years ago. Now
he's such a great dude.
That was co-hating on the burrito boy. So the burrito boy tries to get in front and you know, ask repeated stupid questions of Chuck, and at the same time I see my friend Kyle enter, the non-writer friend of mine, enter into the room, and I go, and I kind of look at the guy and look at him, and I go, and he walks over and he goes, "Hey buddy, I really want to know what it is you were trying to say about all that stuff." And drags the burrito boy off to the side, and Chuck's like, "Oh, dude," and he looks at me and he goes, "Did you do that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And that was the start of a beautiful friendship.
The start of a beautiful friendship. That's right.
Yeah, it was me basically using my friend's very great improv abilities to go, I don't even know what was being said, but I'm going to ask, hey, you made some really great points, man. I want to know more.
I remember meeting Kyle at LibertyCon, and he's fantastic, man. He's
back in the lower 48 now. He's down in Texas.
Oh, good.
I'm trying to encourage him to write, but he's stubborn.
Yeah, sure. Who isn't?
But yeah, so and that's just one example of the many stories that you get when you go to these cons too. So,
that's right. That's right. So we've been talking for almost an hour. And
5 minutes.
Or 5 minutes. That's how it always is, right? When you and I get together. But I really do want to take a few minutes and have you talk about what you're working on now and what you've got coming out in the future. And I have a couple of covers, and I'll try to pop them up as you're going. So
the latest, I guess the latest release would be Infiltration, which is a Chuck Gannon, Murphy's Lawless story.
Right.
As far as novella or greater length. And then as far as short stories are concerned, I've got, there's a short story in Chris Kennedy Publishing. Jamie Ibsen did it. And I'm blanking on the name now. But
in the We Dare anthology?
What's that?
Is it in We Dare?
No, that was actually the most recent published thing, I think. Is the We Dare. This is there's Infiltration. I love that cover.
It's a beautiful cover.
Yeah, and the culmination of events in that novella is fun. That's also Chalmers and Jackson, which I kind of stumble upon these characters, and they told me what they wanted to say every single time. They
Yeah.
continue to do so, especially Chalmers, but Jackson too. And I'm planning on doing another novel with just them, and it's probably going to be a longer one that's centered about them, their activities. I did a short story for the We Dare anthology, which was No Man's Land. And that was really fun. That's completely independent of everything else I've ever done. And it's about a mom trying to rescue her herself and her precocious 5-year-old daughter. And it's told from the 5-ish-year-old daughter's point of view. And it's in the midst of an alien invasion on a colony, on a Terran colony world. And that was fun to write, and I've gotten a few compliments on it. There's another short story, and again, it's with Jamie Ibsen as well. And Then It Got Weird.
Oh yeah.
And that short story that came out a little while ago.
That's We Dare right there.
Yeah, I love that cover. I mean, that cover
is so cool.
Smoking.
Yeah,
it's just so cool.
Oh yeah, there we go.
That's really literally like one of the best covers I've ever been in. Like,
yeah,
anything. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my cyberpunk, love. And that kind of and then, and then it got weird. I took Chalmers and Jackson, and usually those stories are told from Chalmers' point of view. In that particular instance, I took Chalmers and Jackson, and I told the prequel to all the events that happened. I told the events of Mogadishu before they got shot down.
Oh yeah.
And it's from Jackson's point of view, and he's relating it to your character from your Murphy's Lawless Tales, talking about why it is that Jackson sticks by Chalmers despite his assholishness and general ability to get you stuck in the crap. So there's that, and then there's I'm in a couple of Bain anthologies that are forthcoming. It's really come really fast and furious for me this last year. I wrote 3 short stories while I was in Tennessee. My father had a total knee replacement, so I was there to help out. And I wrote like 3 short stories and finished a novella in that time frame. So like I'm kind of lost as to where everything's going. But there's an anthology from Bain, which is the
Talking about World's Long Lost.
Yeah, World's Long Lost is coming out this December, I believe, and I'm really excited about that cover. And then we finished the short story as well.
For some reason, when I got the cover, I didn't get the full. I'm sorry about that. But you can see the important part right down there at the bottom where it says Griffin Barber on the cover.
Super excited about that. Underneath Orson Scott Card.
Underneath Orson Scott Card, that's right.
And Chris Rocchio, so Christopher Rocchio, so that was really cool. And that anthology is like a bunch of it's basically predicated on Lost Worlds, artifacts, that kind of thing that are somehow part of the story as the general theme for it. And I was really excited about that because, again, I went back to that same universe that I told the short story in Fantastic Hope. It's the same kind of thing. It's almost the same kind of setup in that it's an asteroid. But in this one in particular is a friend of mine. We lost a lot of people in the last couple of years, some to COVID, some to cancer, that kind of thing. One of the guys that was instrumental to both 1632 universe and also really helped out with Chuck and helped me launch my career because he was Rick Boatwright. He answered some science questions for me because me, dumb cop, no chemistry, that allowed me to get my first short story completed and put out for publication. He passed away from pancreatic cancer. But just before he did, and while I was in Tennessee and working on this short story, I had asked him for permission to use him as Tuckerize him, use his name as a character. And I went further than that and made him Baha'i, just as Rick was, Baha'i faith, and, kind of integrated that in the story. And it really, I think it's certainly my best independent work to date. I really love that story. I think maybe it's just me, because again, it's the conceit of it's moving for me, because again, lost him to cancer literally the day I finished the story.
Yeah.
I was going to send it to him, and I find out that he'd passed away.
I mean, obviously, you are not the only one who finds the story moving and impressive if your name is featured on the cover. So, yeah.
Well, that could be. And then the other person that was also involved in that was, the narration is split up between first person, where he's talking, Spacer Rick Boatwright is talking about his experiences in 1st Commando of the 14th Fleet. Mm-hmm. And he's doing all these things and that kind of thing. But it eventually becomes clear that he's being interrogated after the events because of his contact with something. Mm. And at the end of it, it comes to find out it's written by Maximiliano Messina, another friend that I lost to cancer in the last year, who wrote the historical record of this finding and how the fleet had buried it, and everybody's trying to hide what had happened, and mm-hmm. how that made it difficult to write a history about it. So I got to basically do 2 for 1 to honor my friends that were both big science fiction fans and influenced me greatly, because Max had given me my first shot at paid publishing. I wrote for Twilight 2013 back in 2012, and yeah. I wrote for that game, short-lived game. But he was the one who said, "Hey," I was playing with him, and he's like, "Hey, man, they need you to write some stuff." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool that you were able to do that.
Yeah, and then, but as far as that's the one that's coming out. I'm not sure when is our the next NOIR, No Game for Nights. When's that come out?
No Game for Nights is coming out in September of 2022, and it looks like this.
Yeah, that's another cool cover.
Yeah. So, oh, look, you were on the cover of this one too, man.
Yeah. With some gal.
With some chick, yeah.
But again, Laurel K. Hamilton, Larry, mm-hmm. Bob Buettner, Sharon Shen.
Yeah.
Neat.
Great stories. Craig Martell's got one in this one. Yeah, I once again cannot say enough about the contributing authors for this volume. Just the quality of the work that they submitted is top notch, and it's really fun. That's what allows these things to be like labors of love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just because, yeah. So, yeah, this one will be out in September of 2022. It is, we've got about half and half mix of sci-fi and fantasy. Bob Buettner's once again blew me away and surprised the hell out of me. He sent us an alternate history story, which is very, very, very good. Yeah, so I think people are really going to like this one. I'm
and again, noir themed, but this time focusing on the detective or the
detective archetype. That's right. Because we got to do equal time, right? So, right. yeah. So that's No Game for Nights. So you guys can look forward to that. Yeah. So cool. Well, where can people find you, Griff?
Amazon. I'm going to Dragon Con this year. Again, I'm hoping you're going to be there to be seen as well. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Cool. And then Liberty Con before that. I don't really have much in the way of other plans immediately, because things are very much up in the air with my medical retirement and that kind of thing. But I'm working on 2 novels with Eric Flint regarding 1632 novels, and so, and plus all the short stories that seem to come across my transom and get out there, and hopefully eventually my individual work will start to get traction in the novel form. But I'd have to finish a few more for that to happen.
You'll get there, bro. I know you will. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this hour-long chat, or 5-minute long chat, as it seems.
Yes, 5 minutes.
To the two of us.
Time has no meaning.
It's a construct. It has no meaning. So, but much love, man. Is as always really good to talk to you.
Yep.
And
same here.
Yeah, we'll catch you later.
Right,
thank you guys for tuning in, and please, I'll leave like a bunch of links in the description below, where you can find Griffin on Amazon, and links to all the books that we talked about that I can remember, and all that kind of stuff. So thanks again, and we will see you guys later. Once again, though, if you like this video, give me the Chuck Yeager thumbs up. Do you guys like the sound effect? I really like the sound effect.
I do. I think this perfect to actually what it sounds
like. So please do that, because it does help the channel grow. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.